On February 11, 1897, Navy Minister Armament, after consulting with the Supreme Naval Council, called for a design of an enlarged Charlemagne-class battleship. This new vessel was to have a maximum displacement of 12,000 tons, an armor system that could maintain stability and buoyancy after multiple hull penetrations and flooding, firepower comparable to foreign battleships, a speed of 18 knots, and a minimum range of 4,500 nautical miles. Jules Thibaudier, director of naval construction, had prepared a preliminary design 2 months earlier using improved Harvey armor, but modified it to raise the belt armor above the waterline and replace the Charlemagne's 138.6 mm or 5.5-inch guns with 164.7 mm or 6.5-inch guns. He submitted the revised design on February 9th, which was approved by the Board of Construction on March 4th with minor revisions. Iéna measured 122.31 meters or 401 feet 3 inches in length, with a beam of 20.81 meters or 68 feet 3 inches and a draft of 7.45 meters forward and 8.45 meters aft at deep load. The ship displaced 11,688 tons under normal conditions and 12,105 tons at deep load. As a flagship, Iéna carried a crew of 48 officers and 731 ratings, while as a private ship, her crew consisted of 33 officers and 668 ratings. Equipped with large bilge keels, the ship was reported by naval historian N.J.M. Campbell to roll significantly and pitch heavily. However, Captain Boussin's report from November 1905 stated otherwise. From a seakeeping perspective, Iéna is an excellent ship. Pitching and rolling are smooth, and she rides the waves well. Naval historians John Jordan and Philippe Caresse concur, noting that the ship's long, slow roll made her a stable gun platform and that she maneuvered effectively. Iéna was powered by 3 4-cylinder, vertical triple expansion steam engines, each turning a 3-bladed propeller. The outer propellers had a diameter of 4.5 meters or 14 feet 9 inches, while the center one measured 4.4 meters or 14 feet 5 inches. These engines were supplied by 20 Belleville boilers operating at a pressure of 18 kilograms per square centimeter, producing a combined output of 16,500 metric horsepower, enabling the ship to reach a speed of 18 knots. During sea trials on July 16, 1901, Iéna slightly surpassed her intended speed, achieving 18.1 knots with 16,590 metric horsepower. The ship could carry up to 1,165 tons of coal, giving her a range of 4,400 nautical miles at a speed of 10.3 knots. Electrical power came from 4 dynamos, with 2 rated at 600 amperes and the other 2 at 1,200 amperes, generating 80 volts. Like the Charlemagne-class ships, Iéna was equipped with a main armament of 4 40-caliber cannon to 305 mm or 12-inch Model 1893-1896 guns, housed in 2 twin-gun turrets positioned fore and aft of the superstructure. Each turret was powered by a dedicated 300-ampere dynamo to operate the turret's traverse and ammunition hoist. However, the guns were manually elevated between -5 degrees and 15 degrees, with loading typically done at -5. These guns fired 340 kilogram or 750-pound armor-piercing, capped shells at a rate of 1 round per minute, achieving a muzzle velocity of 815 meters per second or 2,670 feet per second. This allowed for a maximum range of 12,000 meters or 13,000 yards at an elevation of 15 degrees. The magazines held 45 shells per gun, with an additional 14 projectiles stored in each turret. The ship's secondary armament comprised 8 45-caliber Canon de 164.7 mm Model 1893 guns, mounted in the central battery on the upper deck, firing 54.2 kilogram or 119-pound armor-piercing shells. With a muzzle velocity of 800 meters per second or 2,600 feet per second and a maximum elevation of 15 degrees, these guns had a maximum range of 9,000 meters or 9,800 yards. Each gun was supplied with 200 rounds, sufficient for 80 minutes of firing at a sustained rate of 2 to 3 rounds per minute. Additionally, the ship carried 8.45 caliber cannon to 100 millimeters or 3.9 inches Model 1893 guns, mounted singly and without protection on the shelter deck. These guns fired 14 kilogram or 31-pound shells at 740 meters per second, 2,400 feet per second, and could be elevated to 20 degrees, giving them a range of 9,500 meters or 10,400 yards. While the theoretical maximum rate of fire was 6 rounds per minute, only 3 rounds per minute could be maintained. Each gun was allocated 240 shells stored in the ship's magazine. Iéna's anti-torpedo boat defenses included 20.40 caliber cannon D47 mm or 1.9-inch Model 1885 Hotchkiss guns positioned on platforms on both military masts, in hull embrasures, and on the superstructure. These guns fired 1.49 kilogram or 3.3 pound projectiles at a velocity of 610 meters per second or 2,000 feet per second, with a maximum range of 4,000 meters or 4,400 yards. While the theoretical rate of fire was 15 rounds per minute, only 7 rounds per minute could be sustained. The ship's magazine stored 15,000 shells for these guns. Rear Admiral René Marquis criticized their arrangement in a 1903 report. The number of ready-use rounds is insufficient, and the hoists are frustratingly slow. The 47 mm guns, more than the larger calibers, will engage at night, yet they lack a fire control system for night operations. This must be addressed immediately. Iéna also had 4 450 mm or 17.7-inch torpedo tubes, 2 on each side, with 1 submerged and 1 above water. The submerged tubes were fixed at a 60-degree angle from the center line, while the above-water mounts could traverse 80 degrees. The ship carried 12 Model 1889 torpedoes, 4 of which were training models in peacetime. The ship featured a full waterline belt of Harvey armor, measuring 2.4 meters or 7 feet 10 inches in height. The armor thickness was 320 millimeters or 12.6 inches amidships, tapering to 272 millimeters or 10.7 inches at the bow and 224 millimeters or 8.8 inches at the stern. Below the waterline, the armor plates narrowed to 120 millimeters or 4.7 inches along most of the hull, with the stern plates at 100 millimeters. The upper belt was composed of 2 strakes, the lower 120 millimeters thick, and the upper 80 millimeters or 3.1 inches, with a combined height of 2 meters or 6 feet 7 inches amidships. The lower strake was reinforced by a highly compartmentalized cofferdam designed to limit flooding from penetrating hits, filled with 14,858 water-resistant bricks of dried, compressed Zostera seaweed. This material was meant to expand on contact with water, sealing any breaches. The armored deck consisted of a 65 mm or 2.6 inches mild steel plate over 2 9 mm or 35 inches layers, with a splinter deck beneath it made of 2 17 mm or 67-inch plates. The Harvey armor plates shielding the sides of the turrets were 290 mm or 11.4 inches thick, while the turret roofs were covered with 50 mm or 2 inches of mild steel. The barbettes were protected by 250 mm or 9.8 inches of Harvey armor. The sides and rear of the central battery were armored with 90 mm or 3.5-inch plates. The forward transverse bulkhead ranged from 55 to 150 millimeters or 2.2 to 5.9 inches in thickness, with the thicker sections defending the central battery and tapering as it extended downward to meet the armored deck. The 164 millimeter guns were shielded by 70 millimeter or 2.8-inch gun shields. The conning tower's armor ranged from 258 to 298 millimeters or 10.2 to 11.7 inches in thickness on its front and rear, respectively, while its communications tube was protected by 200 millimeters or 7.9 inches of armor. Ordered on April 3, 1897 and named after the French victory at the Battle of Iéna, Iéna was laid down at the Arsenal de Brest on January 15, 1898. She was launched on September 1 and completed on April 14, 1902, costing 25.58 million French francs. 5 days later, she departed for Toulon, losing a crew member overboard and experiencing rudder issues en route, arriving on April 25. Iéna became the flagship of Marquis, commander of the 2nd Division of the Mediterranean Squadron, on May 1, and underwent repairs from the 14th to 31st of May. Following the repairs, she embarked on a series of port visits to France and French North Africa, a routine she maintained throughout her career. In January 1903, she underwent a refit and was inspected by King Alfonso XIII of Spain during a visit to Cartagena in June. After another refit from the 20th of August to the 10th of September, Iéna and the Mediterranean Squadron visited the Balearic Islands in October. During the return journey, 2 sailors died while training with the manual steering gear in rough seas. On November 3rd, Rear Admiral Léon Barneau replaced Marquis, and Iéna conducted training exercises off Provence from the 19th of November to the 17th of December. Iéna took part in a fleet review off Naples in April and May of 1904 during a state visit by Émile Loubet, President of France, with King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy. Following the review, the Mediterranean Squadron cruised the Levant, stopping in Beirut, Ceuta Bay, Smyrna, Mytilene, Salonika, and Piraeus. In 1905, Iéna was refitted from the 15th to the 25th of April before participating in the Mediterranean Squadron's summer cruise, visiting ports in France and French North Africa from the 10th of May to the 24th of June. She also took part in the annual fleet maneuvers from the 3rd of July to the 1st of August. Rear Admiral Henri-Louis Masseron succeeded Barneau on November 16th. From the 12th to 17th of April 1906, Iéna was sent to assist Naples following the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Starting on July 3rd, she participated in the combined fleet maneuvers, which that year included the Northern Squadron. After the exercises ended on August 4th, Iéna spent most of the following months refitting, though she joined an international naval review in Marseille on September 16th, alongside British, Spanish, and Italian ships. Shortly afterward, while exercising off Toulon, she accidentally collided with and sank torpedo boat number 96. On March 4, 1907, Iéna was moved into dry dock number 2 in the Misiessy Basin at Toulon for hull maintenance and to inspect a leaking rudder shaft. 8 days later, starting at 13:35 and continuing until 14:45, a series of explosions erupted near the aft 100mm magazines, devastating the ship and surrounding area. The blasts tore the roofs off 3 nearby workshops and destroyed the section between the aft funnel and the aft turret. Since the ship was in a dry dock with no water, it was initially impossible to flood the magazines, which had not been unloaded prior to docking. The commanding officer of the nearby battleship, Patry, attempted to breach the dry dock gates by firing a shell to flood it, but the shell ricocheted without success. One of Iéna's officers later managed to manually open the gates. A total of 118 crew members and dockyard workers lost their lives in the explosions, along with 2 civilians in the suburb of Pont-la who were struck by flying fragments. On March 17th, the President of France, Armament, along with Georges Clemenceau, who served as both President of the Council of Ministers and Minister of the Interior, attended the funeral for those killed in the explosion. A national day of mourning was declared and a monument was erected at the La Goubronne Cemetery. Both houses of the French Parliament, the Senate, and the Chamber of Deputies formed commissions to investigate the cause of the disaster. The Senate established its commission on March 20th, led by Ernest Moniz, while the Chamber of Deputies followed suit 8 days later, appointing Henri Michel as chairman. The first explosion was traced to a 100mm magazine and was thought to have been caused by decomposing Poudre B, a nitrocellulose-based propellant known for becoming unstable with age and self-igniting. A report published in April 1907 suggested that a torpedo explosion in the room directly below the magazine may have triggered the blast. Witnesses reported seeing yellow smoke, which matched the smoke produced by burning Poudre B. To investigate, Navy Minister Gaston Thomson ordered on March 31st that a replica of the magazine and adjacent black powder magazine be constructed. However, tests conducted on the 6th to 7th of August were inconclusive because the propellant used was not as old as that aboard Iéna. On August 6th, President Fallières appointed a technical commission, including mathematician Henri Poincaré, chemist Albin Haller, and Poudre B's inventor, Paul Vier, but they could not reach a definitive conclusion. The Navy's propellant branch defended its product, stating it was tested to withstand 43 degrees Celsius or 110 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 hours, though it failed to explain how this test applied to long-term storage in magazines with only natural ventilation, as used by the fleet. The Moniz Commission's report, published on July 9th, blamed Poudre B for the explosion and was debated on the 21st to 26th November. The Michel Commission released its report on November 7, 1908, though it had been debated on the 16th to 19th October, and was criticized for its vagueness. The incident became a cause célèbre, with accusations of government negligence, leading to Thomson's resignation at the conclusion of the debate. The multiple explosions tore open the ship's side between frames 74 and 84, down to the lower edge of the armor belt, destroying all machinery in that area. After estimating that full repairs would cost 7 million francs and take 2 years, the Navy decided to decommission Iéna, as she was already obsolete, and repurpose her as a target ship. She was officially stricken from the Navy list on March 18th, and her crew was reassigned on 3 July. By 1908, Iéna had been disarmed except for her 305mm guns, and all usable equipment was removed. She was made seaworthy again at a cost of 700,000 francs and towed to a mooring off the Île de Porquerolles. A program to assess the effectiveness of melinite-filled armor-piercing shells began on August 9, 1909, with the armored cruiser Condé firing projectiles from its 164.7mm and 194mm or 7.6-inch guns at a range of 6,000 meters or 6,600 yards. After each shot, the results were photographed and the impact on wooden dummies and live animals was evaluated. By December 2nd, Iéna was close to sinking, prompting the Navy to tow her to deeper water. However, she capsized shortly after the tow began and sank in shallow water. The wreck was sold for 33,005 francs on December 21, 1912, and was gradually salvaged and broken up between 1912 and 1927. In 1957, another company was hired to remove the remaining parts of the wreck.